She walked through the Torii Gate at dawn, alone. No security detail. No media announcement, just Sanae Takaichi and her conscience. By the time she finished her prayer, 4 foreign ministries had issued condemnations. But what she said next silenced them all. It was August 15, 2023, the 78th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. Every year, this date reignited debates about history, responsibility, and memory. Yasukuni Shrine stood quiet in the early morning light. The massive wooden torii gate cast long shadows. Sanae wore a simple dark suit. No ceremonial robes. No political theater. Just a woman keeping a promise. She approached the main hall, bowed twice, clapped twice, bowed again. The Shinto prayer ritual she'd learned as a child. She stood there in silence for 10 minutes, praying for peace, mourning the dead. All the dead. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Filipino, American. War devours everyone equally. Behind her, hidden in the trees, 3 photographers captured the moment. Within minutes, the photos hit social media. Within an hour, they were on every news channel in Asia. By 8 a.m., the reactions began. China's foreign ministry. We strongly condemn this provocative act. Takaichi's visit to this symbol of militarism shows Japan has learned nothing from history. South Korea's president, deeply disappointed. This visit hurts the victims of Japanese imperialism and their families. North Korea's state media. Fascist warmonger worships war criminals. Japan's true face revealed. Philippines Department of Foreign Affairs. We express serious concern. The wounds of occupation are still fresh. 4 countries, 4 condemnations, all within 3 hours of a single prayer. But to understand why this single visit would trigger the biggest diplomatic crisis in a decade, you need to know about the promise she made to a dying man. 3 years earlier, Tokyo Hospital Sanae sat beside the hospital bed of Yamamoto Ichiro, 96 years old, former soldier, kamikaze pilot who survived because the war ended before his final mission. I want you to visit Yasukuni, he whispered, his voice weak. When I'm gone, visit for all of us who can't anymore. Yamamoto-san, you know I can't. Politically, it would be political. He laughed, which turned into a cough. Takaichi-san, I was ordered to crash a plane into an American ship. I was 17 years old. My mother cried for 3 days when I got the assignment, and then I lived. Do you know what that means? She shook her head. It means I've spent 78 years asking why. Why did I survive when my friends didn't? What was I supposed to do with this borrowed time? He grabbed her hand, surprisingly strong. Everyone wants to make Yasukuni about politics, but it's not. It's about memory. My friends are there. Boys who died believing they were protecting their families. Were they wrong? Yes. Were they manipulated by militarists? Absolutely. But were they human beings who deserve to be remembered? Also yes. But the war criminals, I know, Tojo, the Class A criminals. They shouldn't be there. But 2.5 million souls are enshrined there. Most were ordinary people, farmers, students, fathers. Can we only remember the good wars? The convenient dead? He coughed again. Harder this time, promise me. When I die, visit Yasukuni. Not for the war criminals. Not for militarism. For the millions who had no choice. The sons who never came home. The mothers who waited at docks for ships that never returned. Sanae held his hand. I promise. He died 3 days later. What nobody knew was that she'd been planning this moment for 3 years. After Yamamoto's death, Sanae began quietly researching. She read histories of Yasukuni, talked to veterans, met with families of the war dead. She even reached out to Korean and Chinese historians asking for their perspectives. What she learned complicated everything. Yes, Yasukuni enshrined war criminals. Yes, the Shrine's museum presented a nationalist version of history that minimized atrocities. Yes, political visits were weaponized by right-wing politicians to score domestic points. But also, millions of Japanese families had no other place to mourn their dead. The shrine held the only records of many who died. For elderly widows and aging children, Yasukuni was the last connection to fathers and husbands who never returned. The question became, how do you honor the ordinary dead without glorifying the militarist leadership that sent them to die? Her advisors unanimously said, don't visit. Too controversial. Career suicide. But Sanae had made a promise to a dying man, so she developed a strategy. She would visit, but she would also give a speech that reframed the entire debate. And then the Chinese ambassador did something unprecedented. At 9 a.m., 1 hour after the visit, Ambassador Wu Jianmin called an emergency press conference. Not at the embassy. At the Imperial Hotel, right across from Yasukuni. Minister Takaichi's visit is an insult to all victims of Japanese aggression, he declared. China will reconsider all diplomatic and economic cooperation with Japan until she apologizes and resigns. It was an extraordinary threat. Ambassadors don't usually demand resignations of foreign cabinet members, but Wu wasn't done. If Japan continues down this militarist path, China will be forced to take defensive measures. We will not allow a revival of Japanese imperialism. Reporters pushed back. Defensive measures? Are you threatening military action? I'm saying China will do whatever is necessary to protect itself. The implication was clear. Visit a shrine, risk war. South Korea's foreign minister piled on an hour later. Japan must choose. Does it want to be part of modern Asia? Or does it want to live in the past, glorifying war criminals? The international pressure was immense. Even Japan's allies were uncomfortable. The U.S. State Department issued a carefully worded statement. We note with concern any actions that inflame historical tensions in the region. Translation: please stop making this difficult for us. By noon, protesters surrounded Yasukuni. Some were genuinely angry. Others were organized by groups with political agendas. They chanted, burned effigies, demanded Sanae's resignation. Her own party started wavering. 3 cabinet members called, suggesting she issue an apology. Just say you didn't mean to offend anyone. That you're sorry for the pain caused. The phone call from the White House came at 3 a.m. What they demanded made her blood boil. Actually, it was 3 p.m. Tokyo time, which meant 2 a.m. in Washington. Unusual timing. The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State on a secure line. Minister Takaichi, I'm calling on behalf of the President. We need you to de-escalate this situation. I visited a shrine. I didn't invade a country. You knew this would provoke China. We're in the middle of delicate negotiations on Taiwan. Your visit complicates everything. So I should apologize for praying? We're asking you to be strategic. Issue a clarifying statement. Say you regret any misunderstanding. Commit to not visiting again. No. Silence on the line. Excuse me? I said no. I won't apologize for mourning the dead. I won't let other countries dictate how Japan remembers its history. You're willing to damage the U.S.-Japan alliance over this? I'm willing to defend Japan's sovereignty. If America only values allies who do what they're told, then maybe it's not really an alliance. She hung up. Her chief of staff looked horrified. You just hung up on the White House. They'll call back if it's important. But the press conference she called wasn't what anyone expected. At 4 p.m., Sanae stood in front of a packed room of domestic and international media. No prepared statement, just her and a microphone. I visited Yasukuni Shrine this morning. I want to explain why. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. 3 years ago, I promised a dying veteran I would visit. Not because I support militarism, not because I deny history, but because 2.5 million Japanese died in World War II. Most were not war criminals. Most were ordinary people, conscripted, coerced, or convinced by propaganda. She paused. But here's what I want to be absolutely clear about. Japan was wrong. The invasion of China was wrong. The occupation of Korea was wrong. The atrocities committed across Asia were unforgivable. No shrine visit changes that historical fact. The room was silent. The 14 Class A war criminals enshrined at Yasukuni should not be there. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Japan must confront its full history. The heroism and the horror. The victims and the victimizers. But I refuse to accept that remembering ordinary dead is the same as glorifying militarism. I refuse to let other countries dictate how Japan mourns. And I refuse to apologize for honoring a promise to a 96-year-old man who spent his entire life asking why he survived when his friends didn't. A Chinese reporter stood up. So you're saying China has no right to be offended? I'm saying China has every right to remember its 20 million dead. Korea has every right to remember colonial oppression. The Philippines has every right to remember occupation. And Japan has the right to remember its dead too, while also acknowledging the evil that killed them. This isn't about nationalism. It's about the difference between memory and propaganda, between mourning and glorifying, Between honoring ordinary people and celebrating war criminals, she looked directly at the cameras. To China, Korea, and all nations hurt by Japanese imperialism, I hear you. Japan hears you. We owe you apologies, reparations, and truth. But we can't heal if every act of Japanese remembrance is treated as militarism. We can't move forward if you demand we forget our dead entirely. What happened in Seoul 24 hours later would change everything. A 87-year-old Korean woman named Kim Sun-ja held her own press conference. She'd been a comfort woman, forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during the war. Reporters expected her to condemn Sanae. Instead, I listened to Minister Takaichi's speech. She's right. The room erupted in confusion. Wait, hear me, Kim continued. I hate what Japan did to me. I hate the soldiers who took my childhood. I hate that Japan took so long to apologize, but she wiped tears. I also know that many Japanese soldiers were boys, teenagers, conscripts who didn't want to be there. Some were kind to us, gave us food, looked away when they could. They were victims too. Different victims, but victims. I don't want to glorify Japanese militarism, but I also don't want to hate all Japanese people forever. That's what war does, it makes us hate. And I'm tired of hating. Her speech went viral. Within hours, similar statements emerged from a Filipino survivor of the Bataan Death March, a Chinese historian who'd studied Yasukuni, a Malaysian academic who'd researched Japanese occupation. Not everyone agreed. Many still condemned Sanae's visit, but Kim Sun-ja's words created space for a different conversation. And then she received a letter from a 94-year-old veteran that made her cry. The letter came from California, written in shaky English. Dear Minister Takaichi, I am James Chen, Chinese-American U.S. Army veteran. I fought against Japan in the Pacific. Lost friends at Iwo Jima. Hated the Japanese for 50 years, but I'm also 94 now. And I've learned something. Hate is exhausting. I watched your press conference. You said something important. We can't heal if every act of remembrance is treated as militarism. You're right. I have Japanese friends now. Good people. Their grandfathers may have shot at me. My grandfather may have shot at them. But we're not our grandfathers. What impressed me was your willingness to say Japan was wrong and still honor your dead. That's rare. Usually politicians choose one or the other. Keep doing that. The world needs leaders who can hold two truths at once. My country did terrible things. My countrymen still deserve to be remembered as human beings. That's how we stop the next war. Respectfully, James Chen, Sergeant, U.S. Army. Ret. Sanae read the letter 3 times. Then she cried. Not from sadness. From hope. Maybe this could actually work. Over the next month, the diplomatic crisis gradually cooled. China didn't apologize for its threats but stopped making them. Korea remained critical but engaged in dialogue. The U.S. quietly indicated they understood her position, even if they didn't publicly support it. And something unexpected happened. Japanese young people started visiting Yasukuni. Not as nationalists, but as people curious about their history. They asked questions, pushed back on the museum's nationalist narratives, demanded more complete histories. The shrine itself began to change. Slowly. The museum added new exhibits acknowledging atrocities. Not perfectly, not enough, but movement. 6 months later, she would return to Yasukuni. But this time she wouldn't be alone. 6 months later, February 2024, Sanae stood at the Torii Gate again. But this time 3 other people stood with her, Kim Sun-ja, the Korean comfort woman survivor, Chen Wei, a Chinese historian, and Yamamoto Ichiro's widow, 98 years old but determined to make the trip. They walked together through the gate, 4 people from 3 countries that had been at war. They prayed together, each in their own way, for their own dead, and for the possibility of a future without war. No politicians joined them. No press conference. Just 4 elderly people and 1 middle-aged politician, standing in a shrine that embodied all the complexity of history. After, they sat on a bench outside. Thank you for inviting me, Kim said quietly. I never thought I'd come here. Thank you for coming, Sanae replied. Do you think this changes anything? Chen asked. 4 people can't erase history. No, Sanae agreed. But maybe we can show that remembering history doesn't mean staying trapped in it. Mrs. Yamamoto spoke for the first time. My husband would have liked this. He always said wars are fought by the old and the dead. The young just suffer. Maybe if the suffering people talked more, there'd be fewer wars. They sat in silence, watching the sun set over Tokyo. Later, someone leaked a photo of the four of them sitting together. It went viral. Not as propaganda, just as a moment of quiet hope. The caption, written by a young Japanese student. This is what healing looks like, complicated, painful, but possible. Epilogue: Sanae still faces criticism for that visit. Some say she didn't go far enough in condemning militarism. Others say she shouldn't have gone at all. But she keeps a framed copy of James Chen's letter in her office. And she keeps the promise she made to Yamamoto Ichiro. Every August 15th, she returns to Yasukuni, always at dawn, usually alone, to mourn the dead, all the dead, and to remind herself that the hardest promises, the ones that cost something, are usually the ones most worth keeping.